All right. Looks like we're live. And adjusting my screen so I can see both. Okay. So we might want to mute if we're not speaking. Whoops. There we go. Okay. All right, I want to make sure I can see everything here. Keep getting confused on which screen is which. Okay. And there's a lag between YouTube and Zoom, so it's a little confusing. All righty, here we are. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. We are here, Steve, Kimberly, and Wendy. And I am Sharon, and we're here to talk about our near-death experiences. So thank you everyone for being present and watching this YouTube live event. And each one of us is going to share our experiences, and then we'll take questions at the end. And hopefully we can answer your questions and give you our insights as best we can. Okay, so to get us started, let's start with what we decided to do was go by date of near-death experience. And that would bring up, who was that? Kimberly. Kimberly, yes. Okay. So I'm going to read your bio here, Kim. Okay, to let everyone know who you are. Okay. And some of you may already know Kim. All right. So Kimberly Clark-Sharp. Kimberly's heart suddenly stopped and she lay on the sidewalk, not breathing and without a pulse. Swept into a peaceful, loving place of brilliant golden light and warm comfort, she saw for the first time the meaning of life and death. After her near-death experience, she became the co-founder and president of the Seattle International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS, and author of the book, After the Light. Kimberly's work with NDEs can be seen on the Netflix documentary, Surviving Death. And her website, or the website for Seattle IANDS, is www.seattleiands.org. So we have a celebrity amongst us. Woo! Take it away, Kim.
Okay, thank you. I want to accent that www.seattleiands.org because if you're in the Pacific Northwest, we meet in Seattle, but this will date this broadcast. We're still in a pandemic. So we are meeting virtually every month, and you can get the schedule and all that at that website. Also, if you want to go to the mother lode on the subject of near-death experiences, that's at the International Association for Near-Death Studies at www.iands.org. That's where all the research is. Research and resources. I mean, it's a vast universe of information on the subject. So I got here by being dead. It was 1970, and the reason I'm speaking first is that I'm also the oldest, but it was 1970, Sharon, Mission, Kansas. I was in the Department of Motor Vehicles with my dad. Upon departure, the last thing I remember is that I felt funny and had wanted to sit down. I have nothing to share at earth level other than what my father has told me, but I collapsed. A uniformed nurse happened to be passing by. She ran over, determined I didn't have a pulse, didn't seem to be breathing. This is just before 911. So the volunteer Shawnee Mission Department of Firefighters was called, and then an ambulance from a trauma center in Kansas City, Missouri. That was the closest place to take me. Firefighters arrived, and bless their hearts, they were probably farmers, you know, on the side. I mean, it was just the times and the location, but they had a brand new portable ventilator and they were trying to figure out how to use it. And they applied it, but it had two functions, one to ventilate, go figure, and the other to extract like objects from our throat, which is why we tell our children, don't run with candy. Or even friends listening, don't run with candy. So they had the extract part on. And so whatever oxygen was left in my body, to be honest, it sucked the life out of me. I mean, I'm sorry to be so funny about it, but I feel very relaxed in the company of my fellow presenters and with those listening. I'm reacting to vibes. I feel good. So yeah, the life was sucked out of me. And then this guy that my dad always called the Good Samaritan came forward and said, you'll never get her to breathe like that, except to use a whole lot of swear words. And he gave up. Ambulance finally came. My body was thrown in the back of the vehicle. My dad jumped in. Off we went to the hospital. Things went sour in the emergency room again. But I hate to give away the ending to a good book, but I lived. So my admitting body temperature was 86, which is not what we like in a body temperature. I pulled my medical records when I wrote After the Light because, you know, I wanted to get it right. And it said that primary diagnosis, possibly cardiac, possibly a faint with a big drop in blood pressure, unknown because of the snafu with the ventilator. And I thought, oh, was a snafu? So, but again, I lived, but I was so different. But what got me there was I first heard a woman's voice to my left saying, I'm not getting a pulse, I'm not getting a pulse. I'm assuming that was the nurse. And I felt like I was talking to her like I'm sharing with y'all right now. I said, of course you're getting a pulse, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking. And anyway, she ignored me. So I don't know. Did I get like a near-death snit? I don't know. I was probably a little annoyed. I don't like to be ignored. I found myself in a completely different environment. It was foggy, it was warm. I knew I wasn't alone. I just couldn't tell who else I was with. I interviewed a 15-year-old near-death experiencer just yesterday. And in her NDE, and I love this, so I'm going to rip her off. She talked about shadows of light. And that was cool. So maybe this foggy material was just shadows of light. I don't know. But I felt like I was waiting for something with the same sense of expectation that I would at the gate, you know, at our airport. You know, I got a ticket, I have a seat, I'm just waiting. And then the wait was over because under me exploded a light that I've never found words for. I just haven't. It was brighter than a million suns, but it didn't hurt my eyes. And by the way, I could see. So what was I doing seeing, come to think of it, if my eyeballs were in my body, wherever, but I could see perfectly. And this light, it was all love. It was just, oh, people, we are so loved. We are so loved. Every last one of us, jerks and geniuses and everybody in between, we are loved. And this was love. If I had been in the flesh, I would have just blasted into a million pieces. It was not withstandable. I had to be in spirit. And this light went out in all directions. And at the same time, it was layering endlessly on itself. And I could see that I was seeing both linear time as we know it, which by the way was endless. Can't wrap my human mind around that anymore. And that layering were dimensions, also endless. More than I can fathom and what I've got between my ears as I speak to you now. But in that location, I got it. I completely understood it. I understood what God was saying too. It was a combination of math and music. It wasn't verbal or English or, you know, nothing like I'm using now. but it was perfect communication. I got to ask questions that any fool would ask. When I say God, that's just 3 little English letters. That it doesn't cut it. There's no name. You know, it's not religious based. Pick your name. I'm most comfortable with my creator, but you know, that's me. Anyway, so I asked questions like, well, why are we born? And basically, you know, we really, really wanted to be born. Maybe even specifically to time, location, and to whom, and under what circumstances. Who knows? You know, what about pain and suffering? Well, it's the only way to get back to God. That's when we pray. That's when we become more devout. That's when we reach out to our source. And on it went. And I felt like I wasn't being told anything I didn't know. It was more like remembering, like, oh yeah, oh yeah. For those of you old enough to know what I should have had a V8 means, it was like that. Oh yeah. Then I was told what no one would want to hear. I had to go back. And I missed my body by a few feet, my physical body, but the me that was me was not in the flesh. Nor was I nervous at all about I'm not in that body. It's kind of interesting, but it wasn't me. The Kim that was Kim that I identify with now that I'm back in my body is what mattered. But then I saw a man I didn't recognize bend over, and as soon as his mouth touched mine, I went back through him, and I like to accent the through part. I knew everything about the guy. It was amazing. But mainly his compassion for me, well, that was the Good Samaritan. He was then doing what we now call citizen CPR. And that was the mouth to mouth. So I think it was that physical contact, but also his compassion. Now I'd just been with the greatest love of all. So of course I was going to be drawn to a reflection of that. And compassion is a big reflection. So in I went, and then I was miserable because I was fully aware, but I was in this dark, cold body, like I was running around and couldn't get out. It was horrible. So, you know, I'm a good whiner. I whined to God again, and God showed up and said, okay, you know, I'm paraphrasing God, but if you really want to go, in this window thing, this portal, whatever, open to my right. And there was my heaven without question. It was beautiful. It was like meadows and grass and some white fences off in the background and low shrubbery and trees. And oh, it was so beautiful. But here's the corker. The colors were not really of earth. The grass wasn't green. It was green. And the sky wasn't blue. It was blue. And every blade of grass had consciousness that I could perceive, which led me to think later, everything has consciousness on earth. Everything. I don't care if it's a rock. And rocks do speak to me, but that's another story. So everything. Anyway, I was told that that was my border, that window thing. And if I went through, I would not return. So, okay, bye. But then a flash went off to my left, and I saw an image of where mountains met water, which was not Kansas. And I was told that if I chose to live, that's where I would live out my days. I didn't care. I'm off to, honestly, it looked like Kentucky. And when skeptics say, oh, near-death experiencers get what they expect, I have yet to visit the great state of Kentucky. I've never been there. So anyway, I was off to heaven, and then another flash of light, and it was people with actually captions that I could read underneath them, like portraits in a way. And, you know, best friend, next door neighbor, really mundane. I wasn't going to be a somebody if I went back. I was just going to be a person. But these people I'd be heavily interacting with. I didn't know them, so I'm off to heaven. And then there was another flash, and I saw myself being of service. And I said, cool. Who knew God was a hippie? Cool was an affirmative. I mean, it was like, God would say, I chose to come back. I would say, I was tricked. But sent back I was. And the last thing I heard was a man's voice, like a loudspeaker overhead, that said, I would forget everything except as it would be manifest. It's like, I didn't even know what manifest meant. But in fact, in time, I moved to Seattle, Washington. Parenthetically, again, I'm not a Kansas. I had a little hamster named Toto that I put in the passenger seat of my car in a bird cage. We had a tornado outside of Hays, Kansas. I wound up living in Seattle, Washington, which then, as now, is called the Emerald City. So I am Dorothy. If Dorothy had chosen to live in Oz and not go back to Kansas. So anyway, and since then, which is why I wrote a book called After the Light, because since then I have been in service without lifting a finger. I'm always in the right place at the right time. I wound up working at Harborview Medical Center, for those of you who are local, in the intensive care unit for 10 really wonderful but hard years. During that time, a woman who was resuscitated on 2 North, the coronary care unit, I watched her resuscitation. When she came around, she told me a bunch of things that she saw, including a shoe on a ledge, which I found. And that shoe on a ledge has become urban legend. If you hear anything from anybody other than me, let me know. Because I've heard now, oh, a nurse found a red shoe, a doctor found a black shoe. I mean, there's variations, but as long as I'm alive, this is the horse's mouth. It was a dark blue shoe on a ledge on the 3rd floor, middle, west side of the building. And Maria, this woman, was in a bed under all, we call it spaghetti, all kinds of tubes and wires and IVs on the north side of the building. She wasn't even near where that shoe was, but she had been flitting around. So that's when I thought, oh, there are 2 of us, and that until it will be manifest happened. And it was as if the jigsaw puzzle pieces, when I had a near-death experience, I had this flat life and I thought everything was in place. Then God, my creator, came along, threw everything up in the air, and it all landed right then when I picked up the shoe and I bonked my head on the glass. I could barely hold myself up and out loud said, this happened to me. And then I learned some Spanish. She was Hispanic. I went back to her room. I was like, Viva Zapata. I mean, it was great. And that shoe became the Shroud of Turin of Harborview Medical Center. It wasn't a secret. And I was off. So I began to ask everybody who had been resuscitated thereafter, what do you remember about being resuscitated? And either people looked at me like I was crazy, or had no idea what I was talking about, or they leaned in and told me. And it was another 2 months before I talked to a 16-year-old overdose who said, without any hesitation, oh, I was with my oompa. And I don't know what an oompa was, but it was her grandpa. And he had died when she was so young that she couldn't say grandpa. And here it is, a suicide attempt, but he scooped her up in his arms and sat down and gave her what for, like a grandpa can, and said, you got to go back. And she did. And she became a wonderful mentor to suicidal teenagers. She went all over Seattle and King County, where we live, telling other kids about don't hurt yourself. And on it went, a blind person. Oh, and then I began to see angels and dead people and scary things. And more than I have time to share, but thank you for listening for this segment anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kim. And I remember reading that in your book about the shoe. That was pretty profound. Yeah.
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 People say, show me the shoe and I'll believe. And I say, clean my garage, you can find it.
Oh, phooey on them. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Kim. Beautiful. Okay. And now we are going to talk with Wendy, or hear Wendy's story. And Wendy, let me read your bio here. As soon as I can find, got too many screens open. Okay. Wendy Rose Williams. In August of 1997, Wendy suffered a life-threatening medical complication while 10 weeks pregnant, resulting in 2 near-death experiences in 1 week. During her profound NDEs, she was met by her angels and her loved ones, changing her life forever. Wendy is an author and past life regressionist. Her website is wendyrosewilliams.com. Take it away, Wendy.
Okay. So what the background to that story is, because of all the times, no one wants to have an NDE, but when you're newly pregnant and just thrilled to be pregnant was the background to it. My husband and I were so happy to be expecting our second child because there had been years of infertility, and I'd also had 2 ectopic pregnancies. So it really was a big deal. So I was working at home by myself, just ordinary day. So I thought, my husband's at work with one car and our nanny was at the park with our 18-month-old with the other car. And everything had been looking great in the pregnancy so far. I'd only had 1 doctor visit and I felt well, except there were 2 little oddities going on. I just had so much heartburn, which I didn't understand because I was only 10 weeks pregnant. So I discussed that with the doctor and it was just, oh, well, every pregnancy is different. Just take some Mylanta. That's safe to take. Well, I have to tell you, Mylanta does not work for what I'm going to describe, but who could know? And the other thing was I was having precognitive dreams, but I didn't know what precognitive dreams were at the time. And I was having repeated dreams of just, I would see this ship at sea and there'd be this terrible violent storm and the ship would always break in 2, all the masts would break off, all the winches and cleats would come off. And just my impression was all this ripping and tearing and the ship would go down. And I didn't realize that was my higher self, my soul, my subconscious trying to say, pay attention, woman, your ship's about to go down, but I didn't know how literal that would be. So I'm working at home, just can't get comfortable. I don't feel right. So I'm trying to work. I go lay on the bed. I go in the bathroom for the umpteenth time. And I'm starting to feel, I've never felt this before, but I was starting to feel impending doom is the only way I can describe it. And some of you may have had some sense of that at some point. So I'm in the bathroom again, and there's this searing pain in my stomach and my abdomen. And I literally look down because I'm like, oh my gosh, someone just stuck a knife in me. And I passed out on the floor. And the reason I came to, and I'll forever be grateful, is I heard a male voice and he was just insistent. And he kept saying, Wendy, you've got to wake up right now. You need to call for help right now or you're going home. So I opened my eyes because I'm trying to process. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I laying on the floor and why do I hear her male voice? I'm home alone. And I'm in the bathroom and the bathroom is flooded with light. It is just filled with light. And there were 4 or 5 very tall figures that I can only describe as angels. And there just were these rays of light coming from them. But I didn't really have any time to marvel. Just my brain went, oh my gosh, there's angels in your bathroom. And there was no more time than that because the angel, again, he was speaking to me really urgently saying, you've got to call for help now. So I replied to him, I understand, but I can't walk. And what he said was interesting. He said, you just have to be willing to try. If you're willing to try, we can help you. So I got up on my hands and knees, and then I didn't have to get far to get to a phone, but I didn't have a cell phone right with me. I just had to get to the bedroom and get to the landline there. It was like being flown. So I'm literally on my hands and knees, just like gently being flown a few inches off the ground. And my brain again is going, oh, I don't understand. I don't understand. And I'm at the phone, I'm still on the floor, and I reach up. It's like, okay, yes, I can reach the phone. And I don't even think to call 911 because unlike Kimberly, this is 1997. It's not 1970. So I certainly could have, but didn't cross my mind. The angel had just said, call for help. So I called my husband at work, which made good sense. He worked only 5 minutes from home. And there the miracles continue. I have never reached my husband at work, but I got him right away and I give him great credit because all I said was, I need you to come home right now. You have to drive me to the hospital immediately. Can you do that? And all he said was yes. And I could hear him like throw the phone down. So I had just enough time to call the OBGYN office. And fortunately, they were located right at the hospital. So I contact them and they said, great, get here ASAP. They don't mention 911 either. They said, that's great. Your husband's going to bring you. When you get here, don't park. We're going to be down there waiting for you with a wheelchair. We don't want you walking. So I'm sure they're thinking, miscarriage or, not quite sure what's going on. By this time, I can see my abdomen is really distending. And I didn't understand why my abdomen would be going up like that. And also I was not bleeding, but I managed to get downstairs, grab my purse, and I'm there right in time for my husband to put me in the car. So we go to the hospital and they are, waiting for me. And I get whisked upstairs to the OB's ultrasound room. And the ultrasonographer tries to do an ultrasound, but all we can see on the screen is black, which I don't understand. And so I literally looked at her and said, is your machine working? Is your machine on? Because I've had ultrasounds before and I knew you could see organs and, see different things. And there's just nothing. It's just this black. And her reply was, I'm going to get the doctor right now. So just sit tight. So my husband and I are looking at each other like this isn't good. And the physician comes in, nurse wife comes with him. So there's now like 5 of us squeezed in this little room. And the physician takes one look at the screen and just looks at me and he says, we need to get you on the floors right now because there's some type of major abdominal bleed. So that made sense to me because that was my sense in the bathroom. It felt like an organ had burst. And I, never had that happen before, but that was my sense of what was going on. And it did make me think of that dream with just all that ripping and tearing with the ship that had gone down. So I get whisked up onto the floors and I'm now admitted bedside. I'm laying in the hospital bed and they're trying to get blood for me because we know there's some sort of major blood loss going on. And I can hear the nurse calling the central blood bank, and she's finding out that there had been a big train collision, evidently a few days before. They don't have any A negative blood for me. So I'm kind of like, wow, that's interesting. So they're, scrambling, making some different calls and calling around to other locations where they might be able to get some blood for me ASAP. So there's a minor discussion of, do we do surgery now? But it just wasn't making sense because, the body is a miracle. And perhaps whatever had burst, was it an appendix or gallbladder or, we don't know what's burst, if that's indeed what's going on, but there's some thought of, okay, maybe this can heal itself, so to speak. And also we don't have blood yet. So it didn't make sense to proceed with surgery. So they do get blood for me and I can't get out of bed, even to go to the bathroom. I'm just lying flat in bed with a very painful IV, just trying to get that blood in as quickly as possible. And I'm disturbed because I can see how fast we're going through bags of blood once it was hung. So they're taking great care of me. I felt heartened that I was with my own OBGYN physician and I was in a hospital that was doing approximately 5,000 births at that time. And I'd also had several surgeries with the physician because of the ectopic pregnancies. So I felt I was in good hands. There was some discussion, do we transfer you downtown? But we all said, no, I'm going to stay right where I am. And after about 3 days, though, because of course there's various blood measurements, blood studies being done each day. And on about the 3rd day, the physician says to me, Wendy, we've got to do surgery. We can't, this is not resolving. You're going through too much blood. You are you are bleeding out at this point. We can't hang enough blood, and you're still clearly losing blood. And my abdomen at that point, I looked like I was 4 or 5 months pregnant. So clearly there's a lot of blood pooling where it shouldn't be pooling, and it's not going through my circulatory system in the correct way. So I agreed to surgery, and I'm put on the schedule for the next morning. It's going to be 2 OBGYN physicians, including my own. And I'm trying to relax after dinner. You know, you've had your dinner at what, 4:45, it's the hospital. And I'm trying to relax and just gather my strength, because I just felt so spacey. It was really hard to focus. People would be talking to me and I would like either fall asleep or like slip into unconsciousness right while they were talking to me. I just really didn't care. I just like couldn't seem to focus. And that was concerning me a lot, because I could feel I was too much between worlds, traveling back and forth between worlds. So the minute I'm relaxing after dinner, trying to just visualize a great outcome the next day, I'm trying to picture that successful surgery. I'm trying to picture my precious baby being okay. I pop out of my body. I am out. As soon as I think positive outcome, out of my body. I look back down and I see myself in the hospital bed, and this got amusing because I kind of started critiquing, because I haven't seen a mirror in like 4 days. And I kind of look and go, oh, wow, she is whiter than the sheets. She's really in a bad way. And also I was thinking, gosh, she looks like a wild woman, because of course my hair hasn't been like brushed or combed, and it certainly hasn't been washed. So that kind of struck me as humorous too. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm referring to myself in the third person. I know that's me, but why am I saying she? And I just felt so great, because to be out of that body, not being in pain, not being so worried anymore, I just felt great. And I can see all this light up above me coming from the ceiling. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to check that out. She's fine, you know, whatever. It's just like happy to leave that body behind. I float up through the ceiling of the hospital room. And now I'm outside and I can see the white light of home. It's like, oh, I know exactly where I'm going. And I looked down at myself and I looked like a white beach ball, but I looked like deflated, like not enough energy, not enough life force in it. And I remember thinking, oh, please don't make me walk through one of those long tunnels. I didn't know very much about NDEs, but I guess evidently I'd heard or seen an image of a tunnel. So the minute I think that, there's this beautiful escalator just comes in just for me. It's pristine. There's no one on it. And there's that light of home is there. So I get on the escalator with a lot of relief. And I remember just like leaning on the railing of it. So I go up and up and up. No sense of time, no sense of space. Just those just don't matter. I just could not tell you. And at the top of the escalator, I step off it and I can see just before I get there, there's this welcome home party that I am so grateful for. And the angels were there, all my grandparents were there, all 4 of them, which was fascinating because everyone's in that same pure soul form like me, these white beach balls, but theirs looked like all lively with like these like all these little lightning storms inside them. They looked good. I looked like half the air had been kicked out of me. And the minute I step off the escalator, there's about 20 of them. They were clearly waiting for me. They knew I was coming and they gave me this huge group hug. And even now, 23 years later, it's like it brings me to tears almost because it was unconditional love. And we just don't feel that very much on earth. It's honestly, love is usually conditional. So it was a big deal. And the angels started narrating. So they're keeping me there. I'm trying to like jump and like look over their shoulders because I can't wait to explore, but I can sense the angels holding me back. And he said, pay attention. I need to tell you some important things. You can't be here very long to be able to make the choice. You're so welcome to be at home. You've done nothing wrong. We're thrilled you're here. You absolutely may stay. It is your choice. But we want you to know if you're going to go back, you'll need to do it quite quickly. So I want to tell you your choice. And your choice is, if you go back, you will have a successful surgery tomorrow. You will fully recover from it. I also want you to know that your baby will be born healthy. So these were two huge pieces of information for me to know. But then the third thing he added was, if you choose to go back, you need to know life will be very difficult, likely for many years, because you're not on your life path. You're not living your purpose. So that really took me aback because I was 36 years old and I really cared about doing the right thing. So naturally I asked him, well, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I missing? What am I not doing? And he just gently shook his head and wouldn't tell me. And no one else would tell me either, because I'm looking at all of them thinking, oh, one of them will give. But no one would. So he asked me again, what do you want to do? And the minute he asked me, I just saw my toddler's face. And she was adorable. And I'm like, I have to go back for my children, because I'm not only going to have her, I'm going to have my other child. So I said, I want to go back. So they gave me a second group hug. That time I caught on. It wasn't just unconditional love. They were giving me a tremendous amount of energy. I'm not sure I would have survived the surgery otherwise and had that full recovery without being given that second infusion of love and knowing that I had that kind of support. So I chose to go back, and everyone just kind of spins me around and they're like, you can do it. I'm like getting the cheerleading, and I go back down the escalator and I just gently float into my body. I mean, I was looking over my shoulder back up at the light, but I didn't feel any regret. I felt honored. I got to make the choice, because so many people say they get, pushed or told, get back in there. You haven't lived your life yet. You have a lot more to do. And I had a different experience. I didn't have any life review, but I got that preview of coming attractions. So that's what happened. How am I doing on time, Sharon?
You're good. I mean, you're at the end of your time.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So
it was perfect. Yeah.
Things were very difficult, just as they predicted, and it took me quite a few years to get on my path. My husband and I did divorce about 6 years after that daughter's birth, is our youngest daughter's birth, and I then got on the path about 6 years after that, when I met someone who woke me up spiritually.
Nice.
So it went from there. So it was the stages had to progress. So
nice.
That's what happened. And thank you for listening.
Beautiful. Yes. I love I have to comment. Yeah. That I love the analogy of your family giving you energy so that you could heal. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure that happens a lot when we don't even really know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Because yes, my gas tanks were just below empty from what had been going on that week. They estimated I lost 3/4 of my blood because it was the uterus, the fundus, which is an aorta, had ruptured. So that's what I'd felt give way. And I had no idea it was an aorta.
Wow.
But that's what had happened.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing, Wendy. Yeah. Okay, now, Steve, let me get to you here. Steve Lavoie, August 5th, 2000 was the date of my NDE, the cause of which was a near fatal car accident. As for my life before the NDE, I had a lot of anger and hostility due to unresolved childhood trauma. I went to counseling, but nothing eased my anger. I was on my way to a counseling appointment when the car accident happened. What I learned from my NDE gave me a lot of clarity and peace in my life. And you can reach Stephen at Stephen Lavoie, STEVENLAVOIE 557 at gmail.com. Take it away, Stephen.
All right, thank you. Like Sharon said, I had a lot of anger, a lot of hostility, a lot of rage, because nobody heard me. Nobody heard me speak. The childhood trauma happened in the 60s. During that time, nobody listened to the kids. Nobody listened to the women that were raped or whatever. And I finally had one counselor that was starting with me on treatment. And I was going actually to my second appointment. And driving through this intersection, I looked to my left side of the car, and there was no way I could have avoided the accident. This guy shot out across the intersection at a high rate of speed. The police, I believe, said that he was going about 72 miles an hour. He hit my driver's door and literally canceled out my speed of the car. So he slid my car sideways and wrapped my car around a telephone pole. A good Samaritan came in, cut the lap belt of the car, of the seat belt that was on me. It was cutting into me, and I passed out. Next thing I remember is a paramedic climbed into the car, put a cervical collar on me. He put a sheet over me, and he climbed under the sheet. He was talking to me really calm, cool, and collected. He says, "We're going to cut the door open to get you out of here." And then he said, "We got blood." And what was happening was I was bleeding from my ear. So I had head trauma on both sides of the head, which in medical terms, coup contre coup injury to the brain. Both hemispheres of my brain were impacted. The door was cut open. I was laid on a backboard and a gurney, and they wheeled me to the ambulances, probably about 20 feet away from the car. And the paramedic kept saying, "You got to keep your eyes open. You got to keep your eyes open." And I said, "But it's too bright." They pushed the gurney into the back of the ambulance. And immediately, all I heard from the paramedic was saying, "You got to keep your eyes open." I said, "It's too bright. I have to close them." Immediately, I was above the ambulance. I literally shot through the roof of the ambulance, and I was looking at my body, but I was also looking at the probation workers from the fire department, the newbies, cleaning up the glass from the car accident. I saw the police blocking the lanes so they get more stuff in there. And from there, I was shocked. Literally, it felt kind of like Star Trek, where I was like 1 minute here and 1 minute in the light. I did not see a tunnel. I know that people say that, but for me, it was an emergency. I was like burst into the light. I was met with these beings. They were light beings. Couldn't really, I've had people ask me, was it Jesus? Was it the angels? Was it, I don't know, but I felt intense love. I was pissed off. I was angry. I had questions and I wanted answers. And they spoke to me in my mind and said, "Follow me." We went into a building, and this building was like a 360-degree building all around. What ceilings were like way high, and I got to see my life review on the walls of this building, including behind me. I guess the leader of the light being people, I don't know, asked me one question 4 times. And the one question was, who are you? And I told him who I was. You know, and I'm watching my life review and I'm telling them who I was, how much money I had in the bank, what I could do, who I could get to beat them up, and this, that, and the other thing. And they shook their head and said, no, who are you? And I'm watching still, you know, everybody that I lied to, everybody that I beat up, pulled a knife on, whatever. And I told them what job I did and what type of car I drove and everything and this, that, and the other thing. No. Who are you? 3rd time, I'm thinking like these things are dense. They don't understand me. You know, they should understand me. If they're light beings, they should understand me. And so I told them exactly where I was with my life and how I was, you know, really this big dude. And they went, no. The 4th time, I started noticing in my life review, everybody that I was beating up, everybody that I was yelling at, lying to, morphed into me. So I was lying to myself. I was pulling a knife on myself. I was hurting myself, much like in Lakesh, I am you, you are me. And they said, who are you? And I stopped. And it was like the breath was taken out of me. And I just said, I don't know. I don't know who I am. They nodded their heads and said, you are love. And that's all you are, is love. I said, I want to stay. They said, follow us. We went outside the building and the sky, it's hard to describe it. The sky was billions upon billions of rainbows and it was just full of rainbows. And each and every single color of every single rainbow in the whole entire sky, like the blue color was singing one tone of the Spaggio tones, the red a different tone, the purple, yellow, orange, you know, the whole sky was just singing. Again, I said, I want to stay. I don't want to go back. And they said, well, in time, you will come back, but not now. But you have a choice. And it's up to you to decide if you want to do this choice or not. It's not up to us to tell you to do it or not. I said, okay. Okay. What's the choice? And they immediately said, we'll be talking to you. Immediately, I felt cold on my back, like metal cold. And I knew that I was back in my body again on this earth. The trauma surgeon that was working on my scalp, I remember he was on my right side because that was where like most of the damage was. He says, you're gonna hear some noise, so that's okay, don't worry. And I heard, you know, going through my head, and I'm like thinking, what are you doing? You know, and I asked him that, I said, what are you doing? He's going, I'm stapling your scalp back. You know, and I came back to the earth. This was 2000. So much like Wendy's, I had a lot of stuff to go through, to learn, to understand about where I was. And in 2010, I moved up to Washington State, where I live now. And I'm sitting there one morning meditating. Never really heard of meditation. You know, I see all these people meditating, doing all the hand things and all. And I'm like thinking, I'm gonna meditate. And so I'm sitting there in my living room, meditating, and I hear this voice in my head going, hello. And I'm like looking around the room, like, who's in the room with me? And I hear, hello. And I think to myself, I don't say this out loud, I'm like, am I losing my mind? And I hear, hello. Oh, and by the way, you're not losing your mind. Immediately, I'm looking around the room. My wife's gone to work. I think I'm going crazy. And somehow I felt this light being look at me and point their finger right here and say, remember. And the NDE came back into full focus of where I was. And I started crying. Not because of where I've been, not because of me wanting to go back there, which eventually I will go back. But I was crying because of the beauty of unconditional love. And I knew everything was going to be okay. In short, since 2010, I've had home meetings in my home where I talk about this stuff. I've had people come to events where I talk about this stuff. And my whole life has been transformed just by this one little event. And I call it little, some people would call it huge. It's little to me because it was a breakthrough that I needed to get from the childhood trauma that I was in to where I'm at now. What I've actually created for myself, and I do it every morning and every night, doesn't take that long to do. I do what is known as inner child work. Some people would call it reparenting. I call it inner child work. It's more fun. I don't talk to my inner children like a parent because I can't. I had some really screwed up parents, and I talk to them as me, as I can only be. I've gotten through so many years of my life and healed so many past memories just using that technique. So there it is in a nutshell. There you go, Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Another beautiful experience. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and for my near-death experience, let me read my bio in first person. Okay, so I am Sharon Sanada-Kumara, and I had a profound NDE in June 2001 after falling out of a moving bus and being run over by a trailer. I was met by loved ones and an incredible, radiant, loving light being who I recognized as Jesus, who I call Yeshua. It was at that time that I remembered being met by Yeshua in a previous NDE when I was 9 years old. And my website is SharonSanada.com. Okay, so let me put the screen back up here. And all right, so yes, where do I start? 2001, I was with my girlfriends. I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and I was with my girlfriends, and we went inner tubing down the Guadalupe River for a friend's birthday. And what happened was we had a great day. Luckily, this happened at the end of the trip. And so we had a great day, had a really good time, and all of us were ready to go home. And so we went to pile on the shuttle bus, which was a little school bus, one of those little tiny school buses. And we went to get, and the school bus was pulling a trailer where we loaded up our ice chests and our inner tubes. And it was full because there were already people on the bus. So the bus pulls up, they tell us to get on, and I'm the first one of our group, and I get on and I see that there's a lot of people. The bus is already full, that the seats were already taken. And I turn around to get off. Something told me, you might want to get off, but they're saying, oh, come on, you can stand. So we get on, and I stand in the back of the bus with in the aisle, and I'm up against the back door. And as the driver is driving down the road, it's a standard, transmission, and he's going through gears. This is in New Braunfels, Texas, and he's driving us back to our cars to the parking lot. And what happens is that as he's switching through gears, I believe it was second or third gear, he's pulling away from the stoplight. He's probably up to 25 miles an hour. And I am slammed into the back door, and I fall out the back door. It opens up, and I fall out the back door. And I end up hitting the trailer hitch with my back. My back is hits the trailer hitch. I bounce off the trailer hitch underneath the trailer, and the trailer runs over my head. I remember as the trailer, as I'm bouncing, I bounce off the trailer hitch. Actually, there was 3 bounces. I remember. I bounce off the trailer hitch, bounce onto the pavement, and then bounce onto my side, off my back onto my side, and the trailer runs over my head at that point. And I remember in my head, screaming in my head, "Stop! You're killing me!" And as soon as the trailer ran over my head, I ended up popping up out of my body. And I don't remember feeling any pain actually at that time. And so I'm up above my body, up above the scene, and I'm looking down, and I see what I recognized at that time as my body on the pavement, and I see the bus and the trailer still driving. And there's another one of those bigger commuter buses driving, and I look, and I see another commuter bus driving toward where I was laying on the pavement. And I remember thinking, well, I hope that bus doesn't run over my body, because it would mess it up even more. But I'm not really attached. And another thought around the same time was, because I knew I had died. I just knew that I had died, and it wasn't such a big deal to me. It was more like, okay, well, we've done this many, many times. I knew that I had already done this many, many times. And I remember thinking, what I was thinking was, this is really going to ruin my friend's day. We had such a good time, and here I go and die on them. That was my thought. Here I go and die on them. That's really going to ruin their day. But I was fine. It was just such a different mindset once I left my body. I was okay with it, but I knew that they were going to really have a hard time. It was going to ruin their day. And I remember what happened was the bus finally stops, and I see my friends jump out, and it was kind of chaotic, and I'm still in the road, and I get kind of bored with the scene. I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm kind of bored with this. I don't really want to watch someone, and I'd rather see what is behind me. And I turn around, and I get emotional every time I talk about this. And who I saw was my stepfather, who had died 3 years earlier, who I missed terribly. And I was really happy to see him. And he telepathically tells me, it's not your time. And I said, but I want to stay with you. And I am going to share my first NDE after this too, which is completely different. And he says, well, I remember him intuiting to me, your mother needs you. And then he turns, and because my mom was, I kind of took care of her. Her health wasn't good. And so we were very, very close, and I was there for her a lot. And he kind of turns, and I see off in the distance a little bit, a tunnel, a portal. I call it a portal. And I see people in the portal. I can see them down the portal. And I recognize them as my relatives from this life, as well as other lives or ancestors that I didn't know in this life, but I recognized them when I was there. And so I didn't really walk. It was like something pulled me, and I was just pulled towards them, and I'm moving towards them, and they're looking at me with, I feel their love, but they're not communicating with me, and they're taking form. They're in form, and they're just looking at me with so much love on their face, and they have these smiles, and I'm moving toward them, and I see them, and then something else catches my attention, or I see this sun off in the background, and it's this beautiful, bright, like Kim was saying, 100 times brighter than the sun, but it doesn't hurt my eyes. It's just so gorgeous. And what I perceived was golden white light. And I'm really drawn to it. And here it comes again, the emotion. And I see a figure walk out or move out of we're not really walking, move out of the center of this sun, this portal of immense light. And he's a light being, and I reckon, and he has, he's just robed, I guess you could say, and looks pure light because he's off in the distance, and he's moving closer to me. I recognized him as who I perceived as Jesus, or who I call Yeshua. And I will say that we were raised Catholic, but I was not a religious person. I did not jive with the Catholic teachings. For me and my family, we weren't good Catholics, I guess you could say. My grandmother in the family was the only one who went to church every Sunday. And when my sister and I lived with my grandmother after my parents got divorced, she would have to whip us to get to church on Sunday. So it wasn't something that we enjoyed. So I was not a good Catholic. I'm not saying I didn't believe in Jesus. I felt the teachings kept him out of reach of the common people, that kind of thing. So I never really felt that I had a connection with him in that way, but there I did. I knew him, and I recognized him, and I flew to him, and we embraced, and he embraced me, and I felt so much love, and this is a common theme, definitely, so much love that we can't describe it here. It's that kind of unconditional love that in human form, we just aren't able to understand it, and we don't have the capacity for it. And I like what you said, Kim. My physical body would have been disintegrated if I had that much light, had taken in that much light with being that close to him. And but it was something that if every cell in my body was smiling, I still was aware. I was aware that I didn't have a physical body, but I was still feeling like I am, physical. I am me, Sharon. And I remember that I was smiling so big, so wide. I was thinking my face is going to break because there was so much smile in me, so much joy. And what I remember the most about him was, besides that, of course, his love, was his laughter. And he communicated to me, "It's not your time." And I felt like, well, then why am I here then? That kind of thing. This isn't fair. I had those thoughts, and he, what he had explained to me was that that I needed to go back because there was not enough time for me to reincarnate and do the work that I needed to do with the cycle the planet was going through. So I don't feel I had a choice, because we talk about choices here. I don't feel I had a choice, but I agreed. Finally, he said, "I'll take you on a journey." And we kind of made a bit of a deal. He said, "I'll take you on a journey, and this is what you can, or what you can have, or I don't know how to put it, which you can, and it's not really an incarnation, but the awareness that you can have after this earth life." And he took my hand, and as soon as he took my hand, we went through the cosmos. I just remember the beauty of the cosmos, and I don't know how to describe it. The stars just whizzing by, and just the beauty and the feeling of freedom and expansion. Words fail me. And we ended up, what he did was he took me to a planet. We were above a planet, floating above a planet that was a water planet. And what he intuited to me is that I can have a life there, or join my life there, not have a life there, but join my life there as a mer being. And that I have, and then we ended up going down onto the planet, and I was aware of my life there with children and a family, and a wonderful life. And afterwards, whenever I would connect to that family, it would just be so emotional for me. It was difficult because in my meditations, they would have to make me come back from being there. So it was difficult for me to be there, because it was just such a free life experience. And so that is what helped me to say, all right, I'll do it. Okay. And it was around that time. And these memories came to me a little by little by little after my experience. And it was difficult for me to integrate the how do I put it, the feeling of knowing that we have this there, and how difficult it is here, without wanting to keep going back, if that makes any sense. And so that was difficult for me to try and process that and integrate that, because I was going through a difficult time in my life as well. I was going through a breakup. My mother passed not long after that. And a lot of things happened. I remembered my abuse as a child and things like that. And so it was, it was, I don't know if that's a common theme or not. After people have a near-death experience, that they have some really tough times. So that in that lifetime, I did not want to come back. After I had that lifetime, I remembered that I had a near-death experience when I was 9 years old. And I didn't remember it until the one in 2001. And I'll just share that because it was really quick. It wasn't as long as this last one. There was so much more that happened in the one in 2001, but it was mostly personal communication and stuff like that. In 2000, when I was 9, I was being abused by a family member, and at one point he would beat me up, and at one point he hit me so hard in the underneath the ribs that I popped out of my body, and I was again looking above my body, and I knew that I had died, and I didn't want to look anymore, and I turned around, and I was met by Yeshua at that time as well. And he took my hand and he said, and it was a very different type of experience. I don't remember him coming out of the light in that experience, like the one in 2001. He was there. And he said, he called me my child. He says, you do not have to go back. You've suffered enough. And I said, but I want to go back. I need to go back. I don't want to start over. I knew at that point, I had the memory or the awareness of what I needed to do. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes. I was very adamant about it. And he said, all right. And I went back, felt the pain, just like in 2001. As soon as I, was slammed back into my body after we left that planet, I felt the pain. And I'm going to call it a miracle that in 2001, the only thing that happened to my body was I had muscle and tissue damage and road rash, and my hair was falling out. I did have terrible head pain, but I had a head injury, and my ear was bleeding, but I was not. They thought I was bleeding from my ear for a moment, but I was not bleeding from my ear. My ear was cut so badly they had to glue it back on. So luckily I was not bleeding from my ear, did not have a brain injury. Although, hey, some people might disagree with me. But anyway, I was very, very lucky that my body was intact. And I know that I was protected. My body was protected, and I've had visions of angels and protecting my body during that experience. Yeah. And that's about all I can think of right now to share about that experience. And we will open up the forum to questions if anyone has any questions. Hi, Kim. Hi, Diane. Barbara, Eliana, Skylar. Hello. Does anyone have a question? We are more than willing to answer any questions. Also, I had a question for you, Wendy, and that went out of my head. I should have wrote it down about your experience, because we're welcome to ask each other questions too, right? Okay. Hey, Kim. So Skylar says she loves inner child work. Yeah, inner child work is amazing. I had to do that too. I will say that after my near-death experience, I really didn't. It took me a little while to forge that connection with Yeshua. And it was after my mother passed, she ended up bringing him back to me as I was talking to her in spirit, and she told me, I have your guide here for you, or someone here who works with you, she says, you know him. And I'm like, okay, well, who is he? I didn't really believe it was him at that time, because, once we get back in the body, we have we deal with the ego and those feelings of self-worth, lack of self-worth. Would you agree? Yeah. We end up having to deal with life and what life brings. Okay, so nobody has a question.
Question?
Yes.
I have a question for Kim. So Kim, you had used the expression when you got home, and you called it a really specific name, and you didn't say it today. Can you mention that name? Because I think it's such a touchstone.
Yes. And afterwards I thought, oh, I forgot a couple of things.
That's okay.
Good.
That's why we have Q&A.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. In the presence of this light, when I was looking around at everything eternally, I said, homie home.
Mm.
And homie home, I later learned from my parents, is what I used to say when I was learning language. So I was 2, something. I don't remember saying it ever, but I was first born. So it's one of those Gucci goo moments, for parents. And when we were like away from our house, but pulling back into the neighborhood, I would recognize, neighborhood landmarks, get very excited about getting back to my space, my toys, whatever. And I'd say, homie home, homie home. And I did that repeatedly. That was just like the cutest thing. Again, there's no mention in a baby book. It wasn't until I was able to find words and communicate to my parents, well, in particular, my mom, that she said, oh my gosh, and told me what I just told you. That's what I used to say. So homie home. And that's truly how I felt I was home. It was just my home.
Yeah.
Where I was from. And now I was really excited to be going back. Also, it was recently when I was being interviewed for an article just this past week. The interviewer, it was for a print, it was for a magazine. So we could just talk, not on camera. And she said, homie home, that's like a child. And doesn't, the Bible say somewhere that, that Jesus responds to us as children, in our innocence. And so it is Matthew 19. I happen to know that the easiest way to get homie home is to be childlike, be in awe and in gratitude and in love. And not always easy to maintain in this jaded old planet Earth, but yet it's possible.
Nice.
Thank you for asking, Wendy.
Yes,
So we do have a question. Go ahead, Wendy.
I just love that because I feel like it was such a leveler of how all of us experienced that love, that unconditional love, and that true healing, and just feeling like we were home. I just love how all the religious and societal conditioning, it's just gone. It doesn't mean a darn thing. So I just wanted to bring that point out.
Totally. It is home, right? I mean, I think everyone here would agree that it is home. This is school or experience, place, planet Earth. Yeah. We do have a question from Craig. Wendy, have you ever met the souls that would have been your children from your ectopic pregnancies?
That's a fantastic question. I mourned the loss of those 2 babies hard. I had an ectopic, and then my oldest daughter was born, and then another ectopic, and then my youngest was born with the NDE experience along the way. And what I learned it was probably about 10 years ago, once I started really waking up spiritually. What I learned via meditation was my guide said to me, you don't need to mourn those babies anymore, because guess what? Each of those souls came in twice. So the ectopic pregnancy that I lost, the first one, she's my oldest daughter.
Nice.
And the ectopic pregnancy that I lost then is my youngest daughter. So I just feel so grateful that they chose me twice and just worked with evidently some interesting anatomy since we went through the ectopic experience and then went through the uterine rupture. So I feel so grateful they chose me.
Nice, nice. Okay, we do have another question from Eliana. I had an NDE back in 2012, and I sometimes struggle with trusting the information I gathered. Sometimes it's hard to believe it was real. Does anyone have any suggestions for this in general?
I do. Those feelings of it being unreal or not, for me, when I had back in 2010, it was extremely weird for me. I was like, I thought I was losing my mind.
Oh.
And I found great grace, great love in meditation and setting up like a quiet time for yourself, external of all TV chatter, radio, whatever, and just quiet down. I found a peace. It did take me some time to really know where I was at. And the big thing is I learned that I'm not crazy, that I'm with a whole bunch of great people that have also had NDEs.
Right.
I hope I answered your question.
I'd like to add a little bit too. Okay. And you want to go first, Kim? Go ahead.
Oh, just briefly, because of the pandemic, I don't know where you live, but once it's over, find yourself a near-death experience support group, because just to be around other NDErs and share, it breaks things into a greater form of reality and less of a, gee, did it really happen? Also, it takes an average of 7 years to process a near-death experience, not to mention integrate. So you're on track, honey. I mean, you, especially now if you're isolated because of the pandemic, this is a huge event, and it's slippery. It can slide away. All of us on this panel have had years to process, and the opportunity to share with others over and over and over again. The other thing I want to add is that there are some terrific online near-death experience or groups that are global. I mean, you can type your question in, like, did this really happen? And hear from someone in Belgium. I mean, it's fantastic. So I would look for those as well.
Yeah, Eliana lives in Salem. So I would like to share, Eliana, if I could, that I totally understand and was going through the same thing with mine. Mine came, it didn't come all at once, and I didn't remember it in real time. I knew that something happened, but it came to me in bits and pieces after. And I agree with Steve too, that meditation helped me a lot. And I would get information that way. And not that I was looking for it, it would just start happening. And I was like, what in the world is that? And so I had communication with my guides or my higher self while I was getting this information as well to help confirm it for me. But I didn't start talking publicly about it. I don't know, just the last couple years maybe. And that wasn't even really public or talking to people. Just in the last year, I think I've been starting to talk publicly about it. I mean, I wrote it up and put it on my website, but as far as talking about it, it's just been recent. And it's hard, it's difficult for me anyway, to put things in linear time with my near-death experience, because kind of all happening sort of at once. And so it's a little bit hard for the brain, or my brain, to put it in that type of sequential time, if that makes sense. And so it was really difficult for me to, to say, oh my gosh, is this real? Why, it doesn't, like Steve, I thought I was insane. I thought I was going crazy, not just with this, but a lot of things that were going on in my life back then. Yeah. But you're not alone with that.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. Welcome to the weirdness. I mean,
Yeah.
And that's why we all need each other. And I wish I could just jump in the car and drive down to Salem and give you the biggest hug someday. But yeah, you're not alone. You're not crazy. It really did happen. Just live your life and let things come back to you as they will.
Yeah.
Let things unfold, because I think that is such a common theme. Because like you, Sharon, I didn't talk about mine for over 20 years. It's just been the last few years that it finally felt right to talk about it and share it. And I didn't know about the support groups. I wish I had, because I think I would have likely integrated it more quickly and better. So I'm so grateful for people like Kimberly, for just the people that put the countless hours into helping people process them. And I'm glad that now we've got the technology and, we can just put together an event like this. So I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic, I like to believe, here's my, homey home childlike attitude towards things, but pre-pandemic, who was on Zoom? Zoom was what a car did when it went fast. And now it's a noun and an adverb and an adjective and a past tense. I'm so zoomed out, all these things. And before, one of the last speeches I gave was in Salem. We didn't know each other, but we'd have to be brought into different communities, which took time out for the near-death experiencer, took time out for the host. It was expensive for the host and the group. The hugs were there, that was nice. But with this technology now, and we're into a year of it plus, I don't know if things are going to go fully back the way they were. It's so easy to communicate this way. I love it. I want both. I want the best of both worlds.
Sure.
The new normal.
Sure.
We're creating the new normal.
Yeah.
I kind of think that there's a lot more people that have had near-death experiences than we know or they know. You know what I mean? That sometimes it can be so emotionally charged, and being home is such an amazing experience that it might take a while. Most people, I believe, from learning from other near-death experiencers as well, that it might take a little while to integrate that. And sometimes people aren't able to put that into perspective. And if that makes any sense, or understand or integrate it or process it in ways that they understand that it was a near-death experience. Does that make any sense? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Skylar says, I hope not. I want the new normal.
It's in our hands. I mean, we've got the ability to create it.
Sure, totally. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Not yet. I love hearing about other people's experiences. And when I find also, Eliana, it just popped into my head that I think hearing other people's experiences also helps validate your experience too, because a lot of times there's similar themes there. There's, similar, we all have our own personal experiences, right?
Yeah,
But there might
there-
be something in there that might trigger or validate something for you. Yes, Steve.
Back in 2010, my wife and I watched a video. I don't know if it was on Netflix or TV, but it was based with the Near Death Experience Research Foundation down in Louisiana. And we were watching it, and I told my wife about my experience, and my wife didn't think I was crazy. But I was watching it, and just everything that everybody was saying in the video about their own near-death experiences, I was going, see, I've been there. That. And it's like, I felt really weird going, wait a minute, these people had the same exact experience as me.
Mm-hmm.
When I contacted the Near Death Experience Research Foundation, and I found out that they had interviewers to see if you had a real near-death experience or just out-of-body experience or whatever. And so this lady interviewed me for 3.5 hours of intense questioning. And afterwards, she says, you definitely had a near-death experience. And it was at that time that I felt heard, because the insanity of the whole thing, I was waiting for the ambulance to pull up with the guys with the white suits and the nice little straight jacket and everything, because I didn't believe what I was experiencing, but to get validation, for this whole thing.
Yeah. I take a little bit of issue with something. I mean, I'm very, very happy you felt validated with that, Steve, but I don't feel like anyone can actually judge someone's near-death experience just based on answers in a questionnaire. That's just my opinion. I may be totally wrong, but I'm happy, I understand feeling validated for that, especially when we don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Eliana asked a question. How do you deal with the longing for home feeling? The longing for home feeling.
You drink.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
It is a very good question. She says, I feel it often. And Skylar says, that's a good one, Eliana. She goes, and then Eliana says, I feel it often. It can be difficult. Do you feel that too, Skylar? Yeah, it is difficult, especially for me in the very beginning when it's fresh. And I'm an out-of-body traveler, conscious traveler. So I try to go there as often as possible. I mean, I haven't been that high that I can remember I've been in beautiful, beautiful places and other planets in my out-of-body experiences. But as far as where I got with my near-death experience, I have not been there in my out-of-body experience. But yeah.
I feel I have the privilege of going there regularly because I take clients to the light, and it's without the drama and trauma of the NDE. So I feel really privileged because I go there frequently. And like you, Sharon, I'm a conscious astral traveler.
Mm-hmm.
So all I have to do is meditate or ask to go home while I'm sleeping, that sort of thing, or just to have those experiences. And also, I feel I'm more fortunate than most because I didn't get that, pushed back into the body or get back in there type. It was such a conscious choice for me. So I just try and absolutely love what I'm doing in the moment as much as I can. I mean, certainly we have challenging times. We have months or even years that can be hard, but I just try and embrace it and know that I'll be there soon enough and I'll love it when I'm there, but I'm going to love it when I'm here. So
Yeah.
it's just a choice. I feel fortunate. I don't have that pining that some people very understandably really do have.
Mhm.
It's grief.
It is. Yeah.
In 1980, April of 1980, driving my car, minding my own business, the light came back. It's like, what? And it was huge. It was every bit as huge as my near-death experience. Completely spontaneous. It was incredible. And after the experience, which, was again wiped from my memory, other than that dang manifest stuff, but it was like having 1,000 years of therapy.
Yeah.
I felt like I had matured beyond anything I could even imagine. And or that I'd been to the heavenly filling station and I got filled up again with light and love, whatever. It was a quantum leap into yet more love. And I, for a long time, actually grieved the loss of it because it felt like a love, like
Mhm.
not an affair in the sexual sense, but in the heartfelt, dare I say, romantic sense.
Sure.
It was just so much love. And, dang, 1980 was a while ago and it hasn't happened since, but yet I can tap into it like you have talked about, but not, I've had out of body experiences, but I've never planned them. They just happen, or lucid dreams or visions or all that.
Mhm.
But if I can just remember that light and it helps me feel more homey home. But I
Yeah.
also know for anyone listening that we're here on earth until we're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
So there you go. And if you're lonely, confused, in grief, broke, mad, whatever, welcome to earth. I mean, it's where we live, and we're going to be here. It is school. I've heard that countless times from near-death experiencers. We're here to learn our lessons, and we chose to do it. So, but we can help each other. That's what's
Yeah. Totally.
We'll have fun.
I vision school as adventure camp
Yeah.
because I just like that better.
Right. Yeah. I had an out of body experience recently. I'm going to say 2-3 months ago, where I was with someone I adore on the other side, and like a mentor, a guide for me. And I said, I want to stay. I don't want to go back. He said, you're 2/3 of the way there. You have to go back 2/3 of the way. I'm like, oh yeah. So it's still a longing. It's something that, and I think that's probably why we forget, why we have the veil when we come here. Right. But we were talking about, something came to me a minute ago, how to integrate our near-death experiences. And I have, I'm reading Dolores Cannon's book again. No, I don't think I've read this one before, Life Between Lives. And they talk about the tapestry. And I remember, and a near-death experiencer talking about that and thinking at that time, and as I'm reading this book again, I've been in that room with that life tapestry, but I don't know if it was during my near-death experience or whether it was in an out-of-body experience that I wasn't conscious in. You know what I mean? I haven't been able to put that in context. I don't know how I was there. I do not remember having a life review, and there's a question here about a life review. But I feel like that I did do something like that, but I just don't have the intact memory of it.
Or perhaps during the pre-life planning stage, because I
Right.
related to what Steve said about the pavilion. I've definitely had clients, kind of relate to that and feeling like there was the movie screens that it's like that old movie that's still so good, Defending Your Life with Meryl Streep, where they're shown the different scenes from their life, and they have to defend their life.
I haven't seen that one.
So yeah, it's an old one, but it gets a lot of the concepts
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Find it. They're in this pavilion of past lives review, and it's a funny movie. And our hero is watching himself being chased by a wild animal in Africa as a Black man. And Meryl Streep is in it. And she has this beautiful, she saved the world on a white horse experience. So when they regrouped, she said, "Oh, what were you in a past life?" And he said, "Lunch."
That's funny. So we do have a couple questions here. Let's see here. From Craig. Okay. Has anyone had the experience of a counselor that reviews your life with you? I've had an experience with a counsel, but not, I don't know, was it during my near-death experience, or was it, memory of it in an out-of-body experience? But I do remember sitting with my counsel twice, actually. And the first time, it was an out-of-body experience, but was I having an out-of-body experience that was a memory of my near-death experience? I don't know. But, and I remember that there were extraterrestrials on my council. There was 2 Pleiadians, one Syrian, one gray being, and the Pleiadians and the Syrians were human. Then there was 2 other beings. I think there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there was 7. I believe there was 7. Some of them I couldn't see clearly. There was 2 on the end I could not see clearly. But what I remember the most about the conversation is they told me that I was here to, and this was after my near-death experience. They told me that I was here to undo some of the things that we had done in Atlantis. And I said, and this was early on in my awakening, and I said, "What happened in Atlantis?" And they looked at each other and they said, let's just say the spokesman for the council said, let's just say it wasn't good. But that's what I remember about my council experience. The other one, I remember sitting with my council and we were talking about what was going on in my life at that time. And I had a very, very big decision to make, but I don't remember it as clearly as that one. Anyone else remember sitting with your council?
I do.
I want to know what the question's about. Is it Steve? Who is the Craig?
Oh, Craig, has anyone had the experience of a council that reviews your life with you?
No, but I mean, Craig, have you had a similar experience?
Oh, Craig is on the feed here. Let's see if he types something.
Well, while we're waiting for Craig, I'll share mine briefly.
Mhm.
So I've met with counsel several times. It was not during my near-death experience, because there it was more like the soul family feeling. And there was no review going on. It was just make the decision of whether to go back and what my preview of coming attractions was. But I've met with what I would call a council of elders, and they're just so loving. There's no judgment. There's this wonderful wisdom. I mean, we're the ones that judge ourselves so harshly. And when I met with Council of Elders several times, it was via hypnotherapy. So it was via a Between Lives or a Life Between Lives session. And it was part of that where I was in pure soul form and was up with the light, up at homie home.
Homie home. Yeah.
So
Nice.
That's what it was like for me. And it was questions specific to my current life now and decisions I'm making for this life. So that's what was being discussed with council. And it was just so incredibly heartwarming for me to know that I could get that level of wisdom and of advice, and just to get that counsel. It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That's how I felt. So much love and no judgment whatsoever. Yeah. And it was very lighthearted with me, very lighthearted. And and it was, you know, you can make this decision or this decision and that kind of thing. And it wasn't any judgment whatsoever. Yeah. So Craig says no, that he has not experienced that.
Yeah.
Curious.
In mine, like I said, you know, the light beings were there, you know, as this whole life review of mine was going on. And at the end, when I saw myself morphing into the people I was actually hurting and unfriending and hating and, you know, doing all types of manner of evil, and they morphed into me, I was the worst judge of my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was very harsh on myself, and I was ready to send myself to HE double toothpicks. And when they said that you, meaning me, are love, it's like it broke open my stone heart that I had protected for a long time. I figured I put, with all the abuse that I went through as a child and as a young adult, I put a pretty good impenetrable wall around my heart that nothing could, you know, and just the intense love of this as possible council of elders, it broke through. It broke through. And so even though I found myself guilty of everything I did, it's not that I was given absolution, but I was given freedom, you know, to be my better self, my higher self.
Nice. Nice.
That's just so beautifully put.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, have you or has anyone else read The Emotion Code by Dr. Brad Nelson? Because he talks about the heart wall.
My wife is sitting right across the way, and she I think we have the book in our library.
Okay, because he talks about how we put up a heart wall as a coping mechanism from just trauma that happens to us. And he theorizes that it can be literally up to 5 miles. I mean, we can be just like keeping people that far away. And it takes that inner child work. It takes that, you know, shadow self, whatever type of healing work you're going to do to be able to just take down those barriers and take down that wall. So how beautiful that the council was able to like shine that love on you to start to melt some of that. That's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
And that you accepted it, because you've got to be willing to accept it and to do the work.
5 miles. Wow. I've heard of that book, but I haven't read it. I'll have to
It's
check it out.
excellent. It also teaches you how to muscle test, because a lot of people say, well, how do I know what's true? Like, am I really hearing my higher self or guides? I just waffle because my left brain gets too into it and just, you know, I drive myself nuts. And it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back constantly. And I'm exhausted from questioning myself. And he teaches you how to muscle test using your body. So that's how I first communicated with my guides and my higher self. It was so liberating.
Yes, muscle testing is really good. I love that. I don't use it enough either, but let's see. I have another question here from Craig. Do the morals that cultures have on Earth correspond to something in the beyond?
Yes, in my opinion. Gets back to that pesky little life review. You know, we're held accountable for everything here, whether we call it moral or not. Every thought, word, and deed thought. Did you hear that? I mean, that's really raising the bar. And so morally, my advice to people is just, be nice to everybody. I mean, that's what's moral. Just be nice. You don't have to add a lot of other stuff. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not smack around. Thou shalt not insult. I mean, we're all given with our emotions, and those are pure and honest. And I'm a social worker, so I boil emotions down to 4: mad, sad, scared, or glad. It's pretty simple. Everything else, flows from those 4 emotions. And sometimes when we're mad, or we're sad, or we're scared, we hurt other people. But also there's a chance for forgiveness if we're really sorry. And then there's a whole thing. It gets complicated too, because there is mental illness, and there is the outcome of abuse, as we are treated. Very complicated being here. But there is a moral equivalent after death that we're held accountable for to the best of our abilities. And that's our get out of jail card for, the old Monopoly game. We can only do our best here. We're not asked of anything else.
Mhm.
If the best is being a jerk, well, that's the best we are. But again, be nice. That's the moral code.
I've found, thank you, Kim. Yeah, that's, I agree. I found that, and I don't remember having a life review in detail, but I feel like I do remember it, if that makes any sense, because we've had many, many lifetimes. So, as we're remembering these things, we're remembering lots. And I remembered tons and tons of lifetimes around this time of my near-death experience in my meditations. And I've also done the between life thing in hypnosis, Wendy, as well. And I do remember sitting with my counselor there, now that I think about it. But I feel that there's no judgment when we are shown our life review. And my memory banks tell me that we actually we have someone with us as we're reviewing, or myself, as we're reviewing our life. And we, like Steve was saying, we feel every, how we affect people, we feel that ourselves, whether it be good or bad. We feel that, just like Steve was saying, as if that person is us, not even a person, but an animal, plant, whatever. How we affect everything around us, we feel how we affect everything around us. And then we are given the opportunity to judge it ourselves. Could we have done better? What could we have, get kudos for our kindness, that kind of thing. So I don't feel, my memory tells me that there is no judgment there. The only judge is ourselves.
Yeah.
I agree. And I feel it boils down to be love. That's the moral compass, because we come from a place of just perfect love, and we're all a spark of the divine. But then we get here and we make it so complicated that just gets really lost. So, as Kim said, be nice, be kind, whatever it is, and just do the best you can. And you've got to learn to forgive yourself too.
Yes.
That's vital. And I feel like that's often the last stop on the train. We learn how to forgive others, and we often forget ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just not going well if we're carrying all these, old baggage around with us, or the heart wall, or the chains from just judging ourselves so harshly.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone, I'm sorry.
No, just was going to say, we just have to do our best, and then just let it go and let it flow, and be loved the best we can.
Yeah. And I think that we're like you said, the hardest on ourselves. And, I think we it's easier for us to forgive someone else than it is to forgive ourselves sometimes. And if anyone studies the law of one, raw channelings with the law of one, my favorite quote from their that channeling is, "In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma." So yeah, that tells me everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, some of us were on Jeff Mara. I know Wendy was, and I was on. Hi, Anita. Yeah, on Jeff Mara. She said she just saw some of us on Jeff Mara. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. She says she does not know how to forgive herself. It's hard.
Mhm.
Yeah. It takes practice.
It is hard. I had to do it. I learned this with a therapist, and she said, if you can imagine just talking with your best friend, how would you counsel and what would you say to your best friend? And what if they'd had the same circumstance and, did what you did? What would you be saying to them? And
Yeah.
then start to realize, oh gosh, I do need to be kinder to myself, because it is going to reflect out how you treat other people and feel about other people and animals and just everything. So it was good counsel for me.
Mhm. When I do my inner child work, and my first time doing it was, I got to talk to my 4-year-old, and he didn't want to have anything to do with me. He was angry, pissed, crazy, yelling at me. And I just sat there and said, "Okay, I understand. I'm you." And he screamed out, "No, you're not me because of what I've been through." I said, "Wait a minute. You and I are the same one. I'm in a little older body, but..." And in time, he looked at me and said, "You're weird looking." I said, "I know, we
As
are."
only a 4-year-old could.
Yeah.
Totally.
This little one,
I know.
this little one finally came out of where they were hiding. And he looked at me and said, "It's okay, isn't it?" I said, "Hey, it gets better, but in time."
Wow. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. With forgiving ourselves, I find that it takes practice. I think we're hard. Like I said earlier, we're hardest on ourselves than anyone else, harder on ourselves than anyone else. And my guides have taught me that I have to sit with myself and tell myself, like Wendy was saying, and treat myself like I would treat, someone else who maybe made a mistake or something like that, and realize it's not such a big deal. It's just an error. It's just something that an error in judgment or a mistake, and we don't learn unless we make mistakes or have challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's some kind and gentle self-talk that I find helps me with forgiveness. And sometimes it takes a little time, but that is the hardest thing. I agree. Anita?
I agree too. I was
Mhm.
very surprised. Forgiveness is actually the theme of my first 2 books I've already published. And it's again the theme of the one that I'm about to publish.
Nice.
And in the first book, I put a forgiveness resource guide at the end of it, because I just really needed to do work in that area. So that's big for, I think, many of us.
Yeah, and I think that's where we have a lot of lack of self-worth in a lot of us, and in society kind of, and I'm going to harp on this because I see it all over the place. Society kind of teaches us that we're not good enough. We always have to buy this to make us better, or buy that to make us better, and so we're constantly bombarded with those messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for young people today trying to, be this perfect outer, this physical person.
Well, that's the whole thing with the filters now of going on. People
Mhm.
don't put up realistic photos. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that's infiltrating all of your feeds on Facebook and elsewhere. And I just comment each time, stop with the filters.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping eventually I'll get banned from all their advertising and lists. I can
Right.
hope, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm used to being banned anyway, so I'm not very correct. Okay. Okay. So we're about to end. Let's see, Skylar, it does take practice and daily practice. Just start with something small and grow on it. Just remember to do it every day. It can be as small as telling yourself that I love you. Beautiful. Totally. Yeah.
That's way to end, actually. You were just about to close it down.
Yes, that's perfect. Yes, and we love you all. Definitely.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. This was just really, really so enjoyable. And I appreciate everyone that commented and that was on the panel. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And Anita says she has us bookmarked and everything like that. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, peeps, thank you for being here. And I really enjoyed this. Okay.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. So.